When you finish Assassin's Creed Mirage, maybe you'll have taken your time, or maybe you'll have seen the main story as quickly as possible, or maybe you'll have 100%ed the entire game in around 30 hours like me. Whatever way you get to the end, you'll see its credits screen, and a short way down you'll read this message. To our players. We have crafted this experience as an homage and a love letter to the first titles in the series, the games that meant so much to you and to us, the stories and characters we all fell in love with, and the worlds that brought history back to life. We hope you enjoyed following Basim on his journey from street thief to apprentice to master assassin in 9th century Baghdad as much as we enjoyed telling it. From all of us, thank you for playing, now and since the day you began. Long live the Creed. This will mean more to you once you play it yourself, but the reason I'm showing it now is to help me explain something. Assassin's Creed Mirage might not be everything a classic fan wished for, and indeed there were things about it I still wanted to be a little different, but this game and its dev team at Ubisoft Bordeaux does something precious to me. It cares. It's a game which, under its circumstances and limitations, was made for us and players like us. It was made for players who love Assassin's Creed for what it was before it decided that it wanted to be something else. Deciding who you're making something for is a choice that defines so much of a creative project. This message to me, to you, to us in Mirage's credit screen inspired me to choose who I'm making this review for. While Mirage is made for all of us classic fans who just wanted to play another game that felt at least somewhat similar to what we loved, this review is made for me. It's made for LeoKRogue 10 years ago, who didn't have this kind of opportunity. It's made for my past self and every other AC player just like him, who clicked on review after review, hoping that some of them would talk about the things he actually cared about. And if you can relate to that, then maybe it's made for you too. My goal then is to give you somewhat accurate information with the very short amount of time I was given to actually write this thing. Is this game AC Wonder Revelations? No, it's not. And it was never gonna be, and we all knew that. Does this game have parkour approaching AC Wonder Revelations, or if not them, then at least Unity? No, and it never promised to. Is this game kind of similar to Unity in origin sometimes? A little bit, yeah. But is Assassin's Creed Mirage Assassin's Creed, beyond just having its name on the box? Yes, and I'm relieved to be able to say that. This isn't meant to get you hype, because accuracy is my hope here. So I'll be discussing the things I feel are weaknesses, but it's nice to feel like an Assassin's Creed game is, for the first time in a while, willing to actually celebrate the series it belongs to, instead of being ashamed of it. In 2007, when Assassin's Creed 1 first released, what was the single most famous system it had that gave it such a unique identity among other open-world games of the time? Actually, among games in general. Lots of games had sword combat. Many featured stealth too, and though AC1 did give the fantasy a unique twist and boosted how fast it was, Hitman already existed if social stealth is what you were about to say. No, neither of those elements became synonymous with Assassin's Creed in popular perception, though they were and are still valuable. Combat and stealth, however, were only two of Assassin's Creed's core pillars. It had a third: movement, parkour, and to this day, to many players, it's the most important. In Mirage, movement is the weakest system. It's not dysfunctional. It's not broken, it's actually pretty pleasant to just use, but there's not much there. Mirage's movement is accessible, simple, basic, and works alright, with a little bit of the stuttering, from Valhalla, but, it's fine. The thing is, that's about it. Mostly. It's what I and many AC Wonder Rev fans expected it to be, which is to say, not what we wanted. Disappointing? Yes, especially if you expected anything more, which I didn't, but I know some of you still did. The thing is, the game never promised complex movement input in its pre-release info, nor did it promise movement much better than the last games beyond mentioning early on that city design takes light inspiration from Unity, which it does. When you play, you can feel that Baghdad obviously follows some pathing mindsets from Unity, especially on the sides of buildings. Shockingly, this might be the AC game with the most honest marketing in a long time. It never promised anything revolutionary, just a fun stealth game, and a fun stealth game is what we get here. I'll talk about movement, but before I do, you should watch this next minute of short clips. Alright, what is happening there? Well, don't get too excited. This review continues the trend of tempering player expectations from my coverage of Mirage before, but at the same time, I don't want you to be completely hopeless either. The rules behind when you can eject, or more useful and more often, dismount, are a little vague but understandable enough that you can eventually start doing it by instinct more often. If you run up a smooth wall with no holds, you can eject or dismount to a valid handhold or even empty space. If a wall is close to you, you can back eject to it even while already holding onto one. If a platform to your side is lower than you can dismount to it. Baghdad is built in a way where, despite the core of movement not changing from Valhalla, the city here has more chances to say yes to you for trying something clever. It doesn't always work. There will be moments where you want to move in a way and the game just doesn't let you. Yes, it will be frustrating. Still, what makes me happy is that those moments are fewer than they were before, and when I try something, usually it works. But they're still there. Movement is the weakest and least interesting part of Mirage's gameplay, yes, and the part which the team understandably had the least opportunity to improve, which is why I'm ripping the band-aid off now and bringing it up first. If movement is your favorite thing about the series and the thing you are most excited for, you're probably the kind of player passionate enough to know that you weren't getting what you wanted here. I can imagine that even though you knew, you likely still held on to some hope, and while there is something here for you, it's not enough when you think about how boring movement has been for years already. The one thing that helps it feel better than Valhalla is that being in a dense city whose paths are this well designed genuinely makes a positive difference. I do have the urge to run around the city on my post-game save file sometimes, looking for cool places to do things like the clips I just showed you. I will admit that as an AC1 to Rev fan, there are still moments where, as amazing as the city design is, moving around in this new Assassin's Creed paradigm that Origins began sort of feels like torture to me. But even so, I'm grateful for the fact that Mirage has been a far kinder interrogator than the previous 3 games ever were. There is a small amount of skill expression available in how quickly you can world process the city ahead of you mentally, and decide which objects to path through based on what's coming up. It's the most basic and first layer of movement skill an AC player ever learned back in the day, but at least it's here, and it feels good to be asked to bring it back out of the dusty toolbox in my mind. Especially true when it comes to escaping or running away from guards, which are the moments where your decision making and movement will be tested most honestly. Not since AC1 have I run away from guards this much in an AC game, which for me is both because it's kind of fun, and because in most situations, on hard, I had to do it to survive. Still, if you're looking for a lot of buttons to press or ways to be creative differently from another player, you will not be that happy. Whether you can make peace with that or not is something that'll be different for everyone. I think by now there's not a single person that doesn't know how much I love AC1 to Rev movement, and how I'm always wishing we get something even close to it someday. This still isn't quite that. But when you're just moving forward, which is all you can really do, it feels a bit like less unstable Unity movement, and in a city this dense that works well enough that you probably won't hate it. One more thing I need to mention that's really important, you can bind sprint to be a hold action now, which I recommend every single player do, whether you're on controller or on keyboard, I don't care. You are going to take sprint off your left stick, and you are going to bind sprint to hold. In fact, Mirage's rebinding is wonderful, since you can set most actions to either be a press, a double tap, or a hold. This means even on controllers which have less buttons to assign actions to, with some cleverness you can work out a setup that feels good for you. Like for example, binding sprint to holding a right trigger or R2, which feels good for everyone. You heard me. Do it. Bind sprint to holding your trigger. What this does is make you feel so much more in control. You see, sprint still lacks clarity and visual feedback as to whether or not you're in it, but when sprint is a hold instead of a toggle, you're never in doubt whether you're sprinting. You have physical feedback pressing against your finger and can feel if you are or aren't. While sprinting, tapping your dodge button will cause Basim to do a smooth and responsive roll, which is something I ended up spamming naturally and plugging into my basic movement whenever I wanted to quickly close the gap between one obstacle and another, get behind a wall when someone's looking at me, or swiftly get up to a guard for a stealth kill. Finally, you can crouch sprint in this game. Sprinting during a crouch is completely silent and a good way to move quickly while making no noise. While crouch, tapping dodge will always give you Basim's roll, which makes it a great button to just press whenever you feel like it, whether just because it feels good or you need the burst of short-range movement. In terms of parkour for its own sake and its own fun factor, there's only so much the team could do here, and it shows. Given what they had to work with, I found some peace with it, and I respect the effort they put into making the simple traversal at least feel okay. It still has problems, but what are you gonna do? Red and Hexa have no excuses and have had plenty of time to absorb player feedback on movement, but Mirage is a game that tries so hard to give so much while working with so little, so I'm not in agony over its movement still being pretty simple, especially because it was never deceptive about what it was going to be. It's fine, it mostly works, the city design evokes unity, but the actual ways you're moving through it do not. Something else evokes unity way better though, and that something else is almost every other system in the game. Starting with my least favorite back in 2014, and one that I actually like here, combat. Before I talk about combat, I need to give you guys some necessary context, because I've heard that Mirage is a different game on different difficulties. If you want something that will truly test you, with taxing combat, play hard. If you want something that feels like the combat flashiness of the Ezio games, play normal. I have only played Mirage on hard and had a wonderful time, so everything I'm about to say is about hard specifically. I haven't yet played normal enough to speak on it, but what I've been told is that the difference between these two difficulties is unbelievably large. On hard, Basim is not a fighter. Mirage doesn't want you fighting, it wants you in the shadows, staying unseen, or if you're exposed and find too much pressure on you, it wants you to run away. Nonetheless, if approached with strategy, patience, and cunning, combat can still be decently satisfying. I found myself thinking so many times, I feel like this is what they wanted Unity to be, except it actually works and isn't broken here. The downside to this is the general speed of combat, which can be accelerated if you creatively use your tools, but compared to something like Ghost of Tsushima on Lethal, you do get this yearning that Basim could do a bit more damage. One of the first things I decided to try was, on hard, can I get in a fight with 6 guys, 2 of whom are specials like heavies, and kill them all, if I'm actually good? Or will the system break and make that impossible? And the answer was, yes, I could overcome them all in a win, but never efficiently. It was difficult, it was tense, I got hit and had to heal. It was slow, because your stamina in combat is precious and your only reliable way to generate it is to parry normal attacks. And still, I could live and win. It's possible, which means it's fair, but it's not something you'll ever be fast at if you choose to fight honestly, which resonates with the player fantasy Mirage provides. You're not supposed to fight honest. You are a rogue, and I'm not just referring to Basim's archetype as a street thief and later an assassin, I mean NPCs in this game literally call you rogue to your face fairly regularly. If you truly choose to fight, then you need to fight like a rogue would, or you're going to either die or waste your own time. On hard, combat has so much friction, and pushes back so forcefully, the fluidity of an AC Brotherhood or Ghost of Tsushima is worlds away. It's not something you're gonna find if you're a good-hearted swordsman going at your foes with just the steel in your hands. It takes so long that if you're fighting any more than 2, maybe 3 guards, you should consider using tools, like knives, to supplement your sword attacks, or literally just leave. If you get into fights a lot and actually play them all out, you're gonna be playing so slowly it'll leave you exhausted. Basim can fight and kill in combat. The animations for a lot of his finishers are genuinely very cool, though they do desync and disjoint sometimes. AC is so freaking back. With all that said, combat is a fallback option, a soft fail state, and a punishment for making mistakes in stealth. So let's describe how it works. Every action that has a combat use that isn't using a tool costs stamina. This is the tightest, strictest stamina system you'll ever play in an AC game, since other than certain perks on gear, the only way you get stamina back is by parrying, and sometimes an enemy is not going to give you a light attack to get stamina back from. That means you have to play conservatively and wait for your stamina to refill by itself, and always keep 1 dodge worth in reserve to avoid a heavy, since there's no other innate way to interrupt them other than dropping a tool. Basim always fights with his sword and dagger, both of which you can swap out for other swords and daggers. His sword dictates HP damage on attacks, and his dagger defines posture damage on parries. Unless I miss something, there's no other way to meaningfully decrease enemy defense except parrying, so offense doesn't reward you, unlike Sekiro. I feel this is an oversight, I don't like it, and I wish that pressing the attack and wagering my stamina offensively actually did something good for me, more than just chipping away at enemy HP. It feels like a missing ingredient, but what it does mean is that attacking can be secretly reserved for enemies who will rarely or never light attack you, like heavies, since you can't parry those anyway. If you're going to be attacking enemies who are open or have just been parried, I recommend you attack them with heavy or charge attacks of your own. That's because those apply better hit stun and tend to be blocked less. If an enemy blocks you, you are at huge frame disadvantage, so you should either use a tool to steal back your turn, or get ready to defend, because you cannot greed for more light or heavy attacks if you've just been blocked. You will get hit out of it. Tools are a massive supplement to combat, and they deal the same kind of damage both in and out of fights, which means sometimes a good knife headshot in the middle of a fight after a parry is enough to give you space to breathe. I recommend turning off the aim assist on tools in the options menu immediately, because it's actually just bad and tends to mess with you more often than help you. But if you're someone who doesn't rely on precision hits or headshots, you can leave it on. Light attacks come out quick and don't cost much stamina, and after one lands you can immediately chain into a heavy right after, which is usually a good basic 2-hit combo and something I relied on a lot after parrying. Pressing enemies with lights only gets you blocked very soon, which tends to feel bad, but if you want to maintain offense on a light foe like in situations where there's only one left, constantly pushing them with heavies makes them very unlikely to block you the way they'll deflect your lights, and since there's no one else around to save your stamina for, it's a good way to finish a fight. When your stamina is out, you can't dodge and your own attacks are weakened, so saving a tool you can quick use or put into the enemy when this happens is wise. If you take damage during a fight, which you probably will, you can use elixirs to heal. You can carry 2 of these. With a skill, you can carry 3. So, not a lot of healing in this game, and considering hard will kill you in 2 or 3 hits, that means you can't make a lot of mistakes either. I found this tense and enjoyable. I just wish the pace of combat on hard was overall a little bit faster, which is an issue I had in Unity as well, which this game obviously draws inspiration from. Fighting 1, 2, or 3 guards can be fun. As a hidden one, you still have the capacity to kill your foes in combat, but you equally have the capacity to skip fights by using your tools or creativity and instant kill enemies without letting them fight back, even post-detection. Generally though, combat is a fail state. Mirage wants you to avoid it, and you'll want to avoid it too, because stealth is so unbelievably strong, so fast, and so fun in this game that it is definitively the path of least resistance. In my entire playthrough, I didn't have a single BS detection. Nothing like weird instant detects from Unity, nothing like telepathic guards wall hacking my position like in Valhalla. In fact, SSI trick or visual lure is totally back too and very reliable. Wait for a guard's SSI to get some yellow in it and then hide. He'll come to you for a stab. To start off with, you're a thief, which means you're more concerned with taking things than you are with taking lives, or even knocking people out, which isn't typically necessary. If someone really has a mission critical item, it's gonna be on their hip and you can just pickpocket it. Which is cool because it's another way this game puts choice in the hands of the player, offering the most fundamental role-playing decision you can have in a stealth game. Do you kill or do you not? Do you engage or do you ghost? Since you can just take keys off someone's hip, killing or knocking them out is unnecessary, and what makes it even more unnecessary is that other than small amounts of resources and claiming space, takedowns don't actually give you anything. There's no XP system in this game, which means you're not soft punished for ghosting to the extreme you would be in the previous games. Basim's starting identity as a thief stays with him and informs part of his gameplay identity throughout the rest of the game. You're never really gonna stop stealing things. There's never a time pickpocketing becomes unimportant. Pickpocketing starts a QuickTime event you have to time right in order to steal something without being detected. On normal I've heard this is pretty easy, but on hard it's actually quite tight. There is a guaranteed pickpocket setting in the main menu, which I did eventually turn on because you always have to do this minigame if you leave it on, and the sheer amount of stealing you're going to be doing in this game meant I wanted to preserve more flow and not focus on something I felt didn't add to my experience once I had, felt it enough times. This is totally a personal decision. You might enjoy the satisfaction of nailing the steal timing every time, since for quite a while I did too. But this setting is also a good consideration for creators who like to do more cinematic showcase content where a flow-breaking minigame on the screen wouldn't be appreciated by the creator or viewer. So for that reason, I'm glad it can be disabled. Good quality of life feature. Knocking out and killing. Alright, Mirage is not an RPG. If you're in position to take someone down, you will take them down. Your takedown or your hidden blade, once you become a hidden one and earn the right to carry one, will effortlessly eliminate everything you successfully interact with. This is what we wanted, and it's what we got. All the normal stealth game stuff you expect is in here. You can do 1-2s, you can assassinate people from the front, and the game is very forgiving about the window on that, so you can do it aggressively if you pick your timing right. You can silently roll to reposition and get around people, and you can use tools to set up and perform chains that are reminiscent of your favorite Unity player's best clips. Tool supplements stealth to a massive extent. You start with a torch and 4 throwing knives, which can be used to kill people from stealth, interact with breakable stuff in the environment, make your combat easier, or detonate spice bags from makeshift smoke clouds. Also, you can use a torch as a distraction even before you unlock Noisemaker. Enemies will react to it very consistently. After killing your first main target, you'll be able to pick another tool to unlock, at which point I recommend Smoke. It's the comfiest, highest value tool in the entire game. Once you've gotten that, the tool capacity skills from the middle tree will become unlockable, which I recommend picking up at least one of as early as you can. So you can either get Noisemaker or Sleep Dart now, depending on how you like to play. You could get Trap, but I found it less useful than the other options. Tools add so much to stealth in this game. And while they're not quite as necessary for success as they were in Unity, all of your existing tool mindsets from that game, if you've already played it, transfer over to here effortlessly, and you can replicate many fundamental tactics. It's got a bit of classic ACDNA too though, most notably in how using a tool in combat makes enemies vulnerable to stabs. Sleep dart a guy or smoke people in the middle of a fight, you can hit and blade them. Stealth layouts and level design is generally very strong and enjoyable. I can see myself playing and replaying this game a lot. There were more layouts I dropped manual saves for here than most of Origins, Odyssey, and Valhalla combined, and the game is short, so even playing complete runs repeatedly to get more of the stealth gameplay will feel good. Stealth games are about controlling info. If you have more than the enemy, you're stronger. If the enemy has information on you, you're in danger. Assassin's Creed's brand of stealth is fast-paced and empowering, and one way it achieves that is your Eagle, which you can use to scout areas, objectives, and guards from above, as well as Eagle Vision, which you can use to peer through walls. Mirage introduces Marksman, which will shoot away your Eagle. I love this mechanic, because it's so elegant. With minimal complexity, it introduces useful friction. Marksmen are just an archer. Mechanically, they don't do anything different from normal archers while you're on foot, but they will deny your Eagle if you try to fly it near them, which robs you of easy knowledge, easy power. Because they're an archer, they're always up high, on rooftops, which means they're always in the hardest position for an on-foot assassin to reach. This immediately makes them a high-value target and forces you to engage with the coolest part of Assassin's Creed worlds, which is their verticality, the unique strength you have in these worlds that no one else does. When you reach and kill them, your Eagle becomes available. But you're also already above everything, so you breathe out, release that tension, and now you're the predator again. It feels great, and if I could have a very hard difficulty mode, one change I would immediately make for it is to add even more marksmen to the world, because I just loved contending with these guys and would enjoy being pressured by them even more. What's also cool is in addition to normal detection meters on guards, we do have Area SSI again, which informs you on your general area's current investigation state. If your Area SSI is red or solid yellow, you won't be able to talk to NPCs, so lose your pursuers before you try to interact. This way to see how hot a space you're trying to move through currently is very helpful, since it lets you know whether you need to be careful about getting seen by guards, or whether you can feel free to just walk right past them. Social stealth is back in Mirage in a big way, but the game won't typically push you into it unless you're lacking in progression unlocks. If you're the kind of player who's just gonna blast the main story and not care much about side content, you will likely engage with social stealth more, because it gives you strength that you're not getting from the tools and skills you would have unlocked. Blending is actually a thing, and there are good opportunities for it if you look for them. Most main assassinations have opportunities to blend that are strong, and it becomes way more important if you're actually playing under high notoriety. You can use tokens, which are basically like the coins from John Wick, to bribe or pay certain special members of society to do a unique thing for you, like wiping your notoriety, pulling guards by playing music, giving you a moving blend group, or hiring mercs to fight people. These tokens are also used to bribe people for intel and basically shortcut certain investigations. How do you get them? Well, by being a thief or by being an assassin. You either pickpocket them or do contracts. If a civilian is carrying a token, their hip pouch will glow gold. So any pouches that are particularly shiny, you should grab those. You should be pickpocketing dudes as much as possible anyway, just because early and mid-game, you're going to be pretty poor. Contracts, on the other hand, will actually tell you what kind of tokens they give, so you can look in your inventory, see what kind you're missing, and focus those. This makes getting tokens via working in the dark to serve the light a lot more intentional and strategic, since you actually know what you're getting, although the cost is that contracts are a more involved task with more steps than just swiping people's wallets in the street, so they take longer. If you happen to get caught while stealing, or if people see you killing guards, you will gain notoriety. Killing someone where citizens can witness it will fill an entire notoriety level instantly, so Mirage will hard punish you for homicide in the public eye. Don't do it. If you must, kill inside smoke, from inside crowds, or into a hiding spot like a haystack or bench. That doesn't gain notoriety. Being notorious will pressure you in a way that feels very genuine, a way I had to respect. Even a single level of notoriety will have citizens recognizing you, and if there are guards nearby, they'll start pointing you out. "Guard, here, the wanted man! Guard, the man from the posters! Rogue, you dare show your face?" I'm not even making up that last one. I feel seen. Thank you, Ubisoft. Not that I want to be seen, let's get off the streets. Unless, of course, you're at notoriety 2, in which case even the rooftops are no longer as safe as they were. At level 2, archers will be on roofs more often, and while this can provide fast nodes to warp to using Assassin's Focus, it also means a space that was your domain is now a place you can't relax in anymore. The bright side is that killing roof archers doesn't raise notoriety since there were no civilians around to see you do it. But if you don't manage your heat and bring it back down soon, you'll hit level 3. And this is when an elite enemy reminiscent of Falakis or mercenaries or frickin' Mr. X starts to investigate for you, hunt you down, and probably murder the hell out of you. This guy is hard on hard, man. You can learn to kill him, but he has all your moves. I'm not even joking. You know how in AC1 the World Templars that you could assassinate as a collectible, they had the same moveset that Altair did and could do almost everything he could? This enemy type in Mirage is the same. He fights with a sword and dagger like you, he will parry you, he will dodge you, he will heal mid-combat. If you manage to kill him, you'll drain all your notoriety to 0, but on hard, I recommend mostly just staying out of this dude's way and tearing down posters or bribing a herald. Speaking of the tokens you need to bribe heralds, I recommend maintaining some of each type, whenever possible. It's not likely you'll run out of them once you build a surplus, but if you're ever in a situation where you need one and don't have it, you'll find yourself roaming Baghdad looking for people to steal from in case they have what you need. Though main objectives aren't locked behind these tokens, there's always another way to get something done, and we'll touch on that when I talk about main assassinations. Assassin's Focus is a mechanic unique to Basim that became one of my favorite things in the entire game, for its sheer versatility and usefulness. The way the game seems to think you're supposed to use it is as a kill chain, targeting multiple guards and then executing a sequence of kills that distort the simulation and let you hack your positioning. You get Assassin's Focus after your first main assassination, and I'm here to gently encourage you to use it in ways other than chaining kills. If what you want is to kill a lot of guards, we already have something for that. It's called smoke bombs. Mirage is playing us for absolute fools. No, Assassins. What you should be using Focus for is movement and positioning, because you can use this ability from basically anywhere except water. You can even do it while jumping. This ability charges by getting normal stealth kills, whether that's with your hidden blade or with your tools. Both count and both give you this resource. You can use it to 1-2 at long range when you otherwise couldn't. You can use it to extend your air assassination distance because you can activate it in midair. You can use it to infiltrate compounds that are normally unclimbable or difficult to reach by climbing a tall building or ship mast, jumping toward a guard, focusing in midair, and glitching to him. You can use it to save yourself from an oncoming detection that would have caught you off guard, or save yourself from big falls by warping to someone if you're about to die. You can use it to thin some guards at the beginning of fights or skip a scripted combat section completely by killing everyone. You can use it to synergize with existing tools, having your kill chain end just as a smoke bomb lands on everyone else. This ability is genuinely insane. The skill gap between players who experiment with it and actually use it, and players who ignore it is going to be huge. You can get a lot of segments of it later in your skill tree, but starting out you're only going to have 2 or 3, and it doesn't feel very fast, so unless you configure yourself hard into Assassin's Focus, this ability is going to be situational, though very powerful. I think it's a genuinely brilliant addition to the game, and it makes this Assassin's Creed feel properly unique, since it's something no other game in the series has. Not even Rush Assassinate is this interesting and multifaceted in terms of the weird, creative ways you can apply it to your gameplay. Still, if you hate it, I totally understand. You can choose to ignore it, and you'll still be a monster in stealth using the rest of your tools. And a monster in stealth you will need to be, because main assassinations in this game are once again Assassin's Creed's equivalent of boss fights. Other games have boss fights. Assassin's Creed had main assassinations, where the boss, the challenge, is the very environment you're in, the way society reacts to you while you're in that space, and the influence that your targets exerted on that society to prepare for you. The main assassinations in Mirage feature the same type of scout, find opportunities, alter the environment, access the target, kill them, and escape that's reminiscent of AC1, Unity, Syndicate, and I guess the Siege of Paris. Closer to the recent games than to AC1 to be honest, but the influence is there. Before you access a main assassination, you need to investigate that target, find out who they are, where they're going to be. This typically starts with you visiting a bureau, but the cool thing about Mirage is that the Order of the Ancients or Cult of Cosmos screens you remember from the past few games, that basically is the entire game. All of Mirage completely anchors around the investigation screen. It's so committed to this structure that the game doesn't even have a normal mission tracker or traditional quest log of any kind. You're not doing quests, you're doing investigations. You're not choosing your next mission, you're following a lead. Anything you need to actually keep track of is in your investigation screen, and even though you could call this a quest log but a little to the left, I found that it was a decent midpoint between something like AC1 and what you get chasing down target intel in Valhalla. I do wish it aired a little more toward the AC1 vibe, but what's here is okay. Every target's investigations are anchored to an assassin bureau, and as you kill lower-ranking members of the Order, you get info on higher-ranking ones as well. Investigations can take the shape of anything, and some of them are cheeky callbacks to AC1, which I found charming. In one of them, you might have to kill some guards with another hidden one who needs help, similar to Altair's Informer investigations. In another, you might have to race a hidden one to a specific location, which was a bold move on the dev part, but I think it speaks to the fact that, although basic, movement here has just enough that you could feasibly succeed or fail at this race, though it still feels a little ambitious, considering there's still not that much you're actually doing with your hands. Of course, there's a bunch of sitting on benches and eavesdropping. Doesn't have to be a bench, you can eavesdrop from any hiding spot now. I just like to do it from benches because I'm a nostalgic bastard. Throwing knife me. The black boxes themselves do concern me a little, as most of them seem to be more concerned with being big puzzles than with actually offering a huge amount of freedom on how to reach a target. The reason I say they concern me and I'm not actually outlining clearly whether they do or don't give that freedom is because I only played the game once and I didn't have the time to properly check by running through them again. As an example, in the first black box assassination, there might be multiple ways to draw out the target, but unless I miss something, you have to draw out the target. You can't actually enter his quarters to do a normal stealth kill on him like he's any other guard. If I'm right, this would be disappointing, and actually make them weaker for replayability as main assassinations than something like Unity or Syndicate, just because the power of main assassinations in those games was the fact that you could go for all the environmental stuff, or you could choose to find your own approach and challenge the raw level design itself, treating it as just an extra hard stealth environment without engaging the contextual interactions. I don't actually know how viable that is in Mirage, so if there's one thing about main assassinations that we still gotta find out as a community, it's that. But what I can tell you is that each one felt really good to figure out and finish my first time through them. When I say they're like puzzles, I really mean it. Two of them in particular, one taking place in a bazaar and one inside a military garrison, almost felt like Dishonored levels with the scale and complexity of potential things I ended up doing to access my target. Again, whether they actually are like Dishonored levels or not beyond a first playthrough hinges on whether we actually can play them differently. But on that first run, the people I was talking to, the side tasks I was doing to get access to different areas, like that felt really, really cool. The military garrison one, I can confirm, does actually give you a good amount of freedom to approach it however you want, and I think that one is also one of the hardest, largest missions in the entire game, so we'll probably see good content made on it eventually. Most black boxes involve you doing actual investigations while the target is already in the area with you as well, and this provides a very immersive and tense feeling, since you're still gathering up the final bits of intel you need to strike, but you're now doing it in a very enemy-dense environment, walking through crowds, crouching around in restricted areas, trying to pick up whatever info you're missing without destabilizing the space around you. And if you do, running away and coming back always felt good. I rarely ever reloaded a save in Mirage. I genuinely enjoyed the feeling of making a mistake, escaping, letting the area cool down, then coming back and trying to be even more careful. The two that stood out to me the most are the one in the Bazaar and the one in the House of Wisdom, for their sheer atmosphere. I won't give any more context than that, but if you also want my opinion on the most interesting story arc of the entire game, the House of Wisdom one in the Southwest District has gotta be it. Save that one for later. Don't rush it, approach it with a good amount of tools, and enjoy the Assassin's Creed vibes. Mechanically though, the Bazaar one and the Garrison one, all the way. There are other assassinations that involve slightly less important targets, often taking place in smaller but still fun to sneak through areas. Now might be a good time to bring up contracts too. You do end up assassinating targets while working for the hidden ones in a lot of these, though they're less central to Bassam's personal journey and more the 9-to-5 work your average hidden one would be doing. Still, they're fun, and they're set in pretty unique environments. Some contracts in this game are better and more unique than most main assassinations in the last 3 games, and 1 or 2 are some of my favorite side content in the series right now. I think you should take everything I say here with a little bit of, with a little grain of salt, just because recency bias is a thing. I'm still high on the newness of the game, and it's unclear how much of it is first-time player bias, and how much the illusion might crumble once all of us play the game enough to actually analyze these things, instead of someone rushing to finish a review or give a first impression. But I think that's fine, because this is just the beginning of my coverage on Mirage and not its final form. Main assassinations are good. I don't know if they're great, some of them are a lot better than the rest, but what I do know is that they're memorable. When I close my eyes, I can see the unique area design, the exact routes I took, the challenges I faced in taking down each target. They aren't just a guy copy-pasted somewhere in the wilderness, they've got specific narrative context around them, and the areas they're in make your job difficult in distinct ways. I remember the bazaar, the garrison, the House of Wisdom, and the palace. I don't remember a single target I killed in Odyssey, and I can only recall 2 or 3 from all of Valhalla. It's not AC1, it's not quite Unity. At times I wished it was. But overall, I do remember shoving my hidden blade into these people, and when I look back on it, I think, yep, that's Assassin's Creed. Exploration in Mirage takes cues from both Origins and the world puzzles of Valhalla. Things like barred doors, areas you have to figure out how to get into because you can see there's something for you to collect, that's very common. The thing is, while I got tired of this quickly in Valhalla due to the scale and frequency of it, in Mirage I found myself doing everything because I just enjoyed it all. I hate to be that guy, but I'm sorry, Assassin's Creed just works better inside a city, it just does. Even the things that seemed iconic to the RPG Creeds, when you put those things into a city, kind of just work even better, because the kinds of challenges and angles you get when it comes to navigating areas you're not supposed to be in, when you're in a city, when you're in a populated area, just feels more natural. It especially works because it again ties back to Basim's identity as a thief. You're not always a hidden one, you still got some burgling instincts in you, and breaking into people's houses to grab their shit is a devious feeling. It helps that there isn't an overload of things to collect in this game. For reference, remember when I said I 100% in Mirage in 3 days? It only took me a single day, one 10-hour session, to wipe the entire map of all icons completely. When was the last time I could do that? Like, Revelations, maybe? This game is tight, man. It's a tiny, focused game, and even the map content doesn't waste your time. If you're the kind of player who likes to run around, stealth kill guards, put on a podcast, and relax while tidying up icons, but you're also the kind of player who got drained and exhausted by that in Odyssey and Valhalla, this game's side content has got your back. Of course, there's also a cartographer in Baghdad's core, its central district, but that you can go visit and buy maps from to reveal the locations of certain things, but what helps is that not every kind of chest is actually marked, and the game doesn't treat it as important or even track it in its location cards. For instance, the only kinds of chests the game actually cares about are gear chests, things that give either a weapon, a robe, or an upgrade blueprint. There are other chests which your Eagle Vision will pick up that have upgrade materials in them, but the game doesn't care whether you pick those up or not. They're solely there for you to help your upgrade economy. And since you can buy whatever is in them from shops if you have a way of making a lot of money, you can choose to ignore some of them and don't have to go out of your way to pick up every single one. By the way, if you want to make money, go to the bazaar. There's a ton of people there. Some of them are pretty rich, steal everything they got. There's also a type of collectible that's on people's hips, which again pushes the thief identity Basim starts as. Pickpocketing artifacts off people's hips that you can give to your buddy Derwish eventually gives you a cool costume or skin. Not the kind of artifacts you're thinking of. Just normal stuff. On the other hand, you can also pickpocket mysterious shards from Order of the Ancients members that just chill in the world. Those are the kind of artifacts you're thinking of, and they unlock something special, somewhere special, once you get enough of them. I don't want to say too much about this, but I will say that unlike previous games where you had to get all of them to unlock one special thing, there are 3 special things to unlock. Each of them costs a different amount of shards, either 2, 3, or 5, and you can choose to unlock those things in any order you want. I went for the dagger first. You should go for the dagger first. Trust me, on hard it helped a lot. Another collectible I appreciated were historical sites, which look a little like Animus glitches you just quickly clear away when you interact with them, and it adds info about aspects of Baghdad to your database. The database in this game is actually pretty cool. It has a lot of cool historical info that doesn't always just talk about a location. It mentions things like hospitals, the justice system, the kinds of wars that led to the founding and changing of who controlled the city. Cool stuff like that. If you like the historical side of Assassin's Creed, you'll probably enjoy reading those entries. At a certain point, I stopped reading them just because I wanted to get on with playing the game. But yeah, there's a lot of cool historical information there if that's what you're into. I already talked about the investigation screen earlier, but I will reiterate that because the entire game's progress is fed through this system, it basically makes you feel like a detective pretty much at all times. You can track an investigation lead from the screen and then see its general location in the world, where you can then go and follow up on it. In the end, if you don't really do your own thinking and reflecting and mindlessly track a lead so you can run to where it is instead of reading whatever clues are in that screen, it can end up feeling like a normal objective marker, which is a bit of a shame. But overall, I found myself appreciating the approach they took here, and if nothing else, at least they dress doing missions in Assassin's Creed flavoring, which is a lot better than not doing that. Contracts are something you can accept from a contract board in any bureau. There is a finite amount of them in the game, they do not infinitely generate, and new ones get unlocked in waves, either by finishing previous ones or by reaching points in the main story. There's a good amount of them, but not an overwhelming amount, and if you don't care to do all of them, I just recommend you do the ones that give skill points, since there is no XP system, which means there's no way to grind skills in this game. You only get skill points for doing tasks, and finishing contracts that give skill points is one of the quickest ways to get some early on, aside from killing main targets. Tales of Baghdad are basically like Paris stories or world events. There's not a lot of them, I only remember like 5 or 6, but each one was pretty unique. If you see one of these, do it, because they'll give you a skill point too. So what are we doing with these skill points? Skills in Mirage are split into 3 trees, and you can respec for free anytime you want. This is a big deal because, as I said, you can't grind for skills, so being able to change what your skills are is important, otherwise you'd be stuck with whatever you chose, in a system that doesn't make it easy to get more. A good example for me early on was, I got the kick skill which lets me displace an enemy after parrying, and used it in some fights in a short mission. But a bit later I had to infiltrate a large compound, where fighting would be something I shouldn't be doing anyway, so I removed kick and put that point into improving Enkidu's scouting, which would help me a lot more in that dense stealth environment. There might be multiple points throughout the game where you find yourself refunding a skill in order to get something that's going to give you more of an advantage, and that's a cool feeling. The nice thing about this is that you can also toggle off almost all your skills if you don't want them, a nice quality of life feature for certain players. I say almost because the skills that govern new tool slots in your tool wheel cannot be reset. Makes sense, there's probably some kind of programming consideration there that would make things messy if we could delete the item slot for something we've already unlocked. Speaking of tools, my god, it sucks that I don't have infinite time to write and talk because I have so much to say about the system, but I have to keep things short. Tools are, like I said in the stealth section of this video, the biggest enhancer of gameplay in Mirage. You can use them in even more creative ways than it seems. When you upgrade them, you can mod them to do different things, and anytime you visit a bureau, you can remod them to do something different, or outright unmod them entirely. So if you realize you just want a tool's base functions or you hate a certain upgrade, you can revert it. This is a hallelujah moment for me, after the video I made hoping for this to be true. Smoke, darts, knives, noisemakers, traps, it's very likely you'll find most of these useful, or find a way to make them useful for your playstyle. Tool modding is a massive part of customization, and I do expect different kinds of players to lean toward tool mods that suit their playstyle. I probably wouldn't ever use fire smoke, for example, but another player might. In fact, when I spoke to other players who had early access to review the game, their tool setups were actually completely different from mine. They found success playing their way, I found success playing mine. But both of us felt in control of our gameplay using the setups we leaned into. If there's one type of content you can definitely expect from me moving forward, it's going to be discussion videos and guides about tools, every single different mod combination, and the different things that we can do with them. Dude, this system is insane. Tools are just crazy in this game. Gear is a thing in this game, and it's very basic and simple. 100 Assassin's Creed players rejoiced and said think Minerva. That said, what you choose to use still matters and still lets you lean into a playstyle. I hesitate to call it a build because it's not complex enough for that, but if you engage with the system, you'll be more efficient than those who don't. Swords, daggers, and outfits all have perks, and these perks can supplement some mechanics, but they're all simple and readable. I ended up settling on a dagger that gave me lifesteal every 5 attacks, a sword that poisoned an enemy every 5 attacks, and robes that gave more assassin focus per stealth kill. Equipment is found in gear chests marked around the world, so definitely pick those up when you see them, and hope you don't get an upgrade schematic for something you don't care about. Those upgrade schematics are required to upgrade a piece of gear at a blacksmith, and upgrading things is itself simple. Every item has 3 tiers. It gets better at each one. Outfits have their associated mechanic like takedown noise or assassin focus gain improve at every tier. Weapons, on the other hand, have their perks stay the same, but their damage increases. Simple. There are also cosmetics. Costumes go over your actual outfit, so there are skins you can wear while still retaining your desired perks. Talismans are the little keychain that dangles off your back. You can actually unequip these completely if you want your back to be clean. Dyes are attached to specific outfits, which will disappoint some players who want to be able to dye things, anything. And different skins for your mount or eagle you can get and then change at stables. Finally, you can also transmog your weapons to look like a different weapon. Just tab over to that at any blacksmith. Simple stuff, but works alright for the scale of game that it is. I'll touch on the story briefly because there are players better suited to this than me, since I spent so much time focusing on gameplay. Assassin's Creed Mirage has no present-day story to speak of. None. You get an opening monologue by William Miles, but beyond that you will not even get a single cutscene. Not even something at the end. So if what you want is something that actually pushes the Assassin's Creed universe forward, this is not the game you're looking for. It's a game that fills in the unknown space of the early years of Bassam's life, and that's about it. It does, however, have a fair bit of First Civilization story, because, of course, if you've kept up with Assassin's Creed as a universe, you already know this has to be the case. Memory corridors do exist in the game, first of all, for major targets, but not every target you kill gets one, only the properly important ones, and they don't actually give you much information, but they do make you question what you're doing, just not quite the way that Altair learned to question Al-Mualim. Instead, the way these targets press on Bassam's mind is very unique to something he has in common with them. After all, the Order of the Ancients are not Templars. Templars, later in Assassin's Creed's timeline, would collect pieces of Eden and Isu technology as a means to an end, because it helped them achieve societal control. The Order of the Ancients, meanwhile, are the inverse. They only really care about societal control insofar as it grants them easier access to those artifacts, to those pieces of Eden. Why? Well, as all of us who've played Valhalla know, it's because the Order of the Ancients is effectively the spiritual precursor to the Instruments of the First Will, not just the Templar Order. They worship the First Civilization, they revere them, they hold sacred objects and ideologies that associate with them. How this ties to Basim, I won't mention here. If you know, you know, and if you don't know, you should play the game and probably watch Valhalla's cutscenes before you do. Basim starts as a street thief with ideals of making the world a better place, since he can see the misery of people around him. His best friend, Nihal, is someone who doesn't really vibe with this idea of selflessness. She's also a thief, and she lives in the same world that he does, but as she's quick to point out, noble ideas don't put food on the table. They gotta eat, and the hidden ones seem to be a bit cheap in terms of how much they pay people. They basically got that I'll pay you an exposure mindset that drives all my artist friends crazy. He's eager to prove himself to the hidden ones though, because he genuinely thinks working for them is his best chance at becoming something more than he is. And although Nihal wishes he'd be more realistic, she loves him and cares for her friend, so she stays by his side. One of my favorite things about Mirage's story is the bond between Basim and Nihal. She's there for him in a way no one else really is. The way Basim describes her, either in the database or her icon in the investigation screen when she asks him for help with her own life even after he becomes a hidden one, he says that he and Nihal share a bond like no other. I know what it's like to have a connection like that, something that you can't really describe. What is she? A friend? A sister? A girlfriend? A rival? Neither of them know, and they wouldn't be able to tell you. They just love each other, and they matter to each other. This kind of unique, special bond really resonates with me at this point in my life, and the times they fight and are worried they might not reconcile were moments that kind of devastated me and really hurt. Roshan, Basim's mentor, is also cool as hell. Honestly, at times I kind of wish this was her game, and I'm never gonna stop hoping she gets one. Her voice provided by Shorey Aghdashloo is incredible, but I didn't need to tell you that. Everyone who's heard her in anything already knows. I found a lot of wisdom in Roshan's words and speeches, and the way she guides and trains Basim was something I missed from Assassin's Creed for many years. A mentor like that is necessary when you're going to be killing tyrants controlling society from the shadows. A few Order members particularly impressed me, but in my experience I found most of the targets in this game failed to emotionally resonate in a way that some in previous games did. I wanted to hate these people, but I didn't actually end up feeling that much for them. I killed them because it was my job to kill them, which I suppose is actually fitting for the narrative context. You are just a hidden one doing your job. Still, I would have definitely enjoyed myself more if I had more personal reasons to knife these guys in the throat. AC1's Templars, despicable, whose graves I would happily spit on, these guys are definitely not. There are some other characters I'll leave you to discover for yourself. I think Ali is particularly interesting in the way he challenges and verbally spars with Basim, as well as his eagerness for open combat. But one character that kept me haunted for the entire game was the genie that Basim sees in his nightmarish visions. A lot of players had some theories about what this thing actually is before release, and while I'm not going to confirm or deny anything, I will say it appears in memory corridors a hell of a lot. Basim is the only person who sees it, and if you've already played Valhalla, we kind of know what's going on here. Still, I found Mirage's ending to be pretty cool, and if you're able to avoid spoilers, please do. The exact specifics of what happens are interesting enough that I recommend seeing it for yourself. One aspect of the story that did let me down a little is something that other players may or may not agree with. I have said before that Valhalla's Basim is the Assassin's Creed character I emotionally resonate with the most since Altair. This is true, but Mirage's Basim failed to engage me in that same way. I didn't see as much of myself in this younger man. I didn't relate to him the way that Valhalla's Basim was so resonant with me. I understand that he hasn't lived through the experiences that would change him to be that fascinating character just yet, and that he's still in the process of becoming himself. But if there's a single criticism I had to give for the story, it's that I kind of wish Basim felt a little bit more like his Valhalla self, that I could feel that shine through more often than it did. By the end of the game, he does get there, but then it gave me the sense that, well, now that this character has finally become so interesting, the person I relate to, the game is basically over. I didn't really get to be in the hood and robes of the Basim that made me think, wow, this character is so LeoKRogue. Still, there are elements of this younger Rogue story that I did resonate with and enjoy, particularly his desire to strike at tyranny, his wish to understand himself and find out who he actually wants to be, the way he both draws on and challenges those around him who have something to teach him, and his incredibly close relationship with Nihal, who always has his back, more than a friend, more than a sister, but something truly unique. That did pull on my heart several times, and I think their bond is the best part of Basim's story. To me, the tight pacing of Assassin's Creed Mirage does work to its benefit, and the atmosphere and feel of the world enhances it greatly. I yearn to be back in this Middle Eastern setting for a long time, since to me this is basically what Assassin's Creed always was to me atmospherically, and it's about time we get to experience that vibe again. This story didn't make me as emotional as my favorite ones in the series, and I did wish it would pierce my heart more than it did, but as a companion to the incredible gameplay, and a tight, short, focused narrative that I'll be playing again and again to understand more of and pick up on interesting details, I mean, I can't really complain about that. It doesn't do much to push the Assassin's Creed universe forward, but it also doesn't do anything to damage it, which I, and I know many other AC fans, will be very thankful for. I'm going to take a moment to discuss replayability. Mirage has absolutely no in-game mission replay options of any kind, and it doesn't have New Game Plus either. There is nothing that you can replay. Not contracts, not assassinations, there aren't any kind of challenge maps you can repeat to get higher scores or better times. There's nothing like that. What this means is that once you're finished the game's content and have wiped the map, there is literally nothing to do. Nothing. This is a weakness of Mirage, a genuine weakness, and an actual negative aspect of it that I can straight up say, this is bad and it needs to be better. In shorter Assassin's Creed games, this is solved by being able to replay memories from your progress tracker. In longer Assassin's Creed games, this is not an issue. Since there's so much to do, you're not going to finish it all anyway, not for a long time. But I 100% in Mirage in 30 hours, and my first save has nothing to do. Nothing to use my cool Basim on. I have these sick Master Assassin robes and I basically have to roam through an empty world, because I had the audacity to enjoy the game too much and finish everything when it became available. Manual saves and quick saving, on the other hand, are amazing. You can hold multiple manual saves, I have about 15 of them, save before various black boxes, contracts, and other interesting situations, and loading your saves works pretty well. So if you're the kind of player who wants to replay your favorite situations, I recommend making manual saves often and writing down somewhere what each one is. I hope this game gets some kind of replayability. Whether it's New Game Plus, or replayable contracts, replayable missions, resettable contracts, resettable areas, something like that. I think I would prefer replayable contracts the most. That alone, and if they can swing it, Assassinations, would do wonders for this game's replayability. But it needs something. It's not just a matter of you can go back and play it again from the beginning, it's a matter of what reason do you have to engage with the world once you already have everything unlocked? You know, that is when the game becomes the most interesting. That is when you have everything at your disposal. And if you're the kind of player like me who does everything as soon as you can, then you have nothing to do. Before I close out this video, I'll say I'll probably be streaming this game on Twitch quite a bit over the following days, so definitely come hang out and I appreciate your time. But now I have to conclude this somehow, and I'm nervous because the only thing I have to give you is my genuine feelings. Assassin's Creed Mirage is a good game. It's a good stealth game, and it's a good Assassin's Creed game. It's not my favorite story, but it's fine. It's not a revolution. It's not an evolution. Most players, except those who are exceptionally picky and demanding, are gonna find this game to be a good version of something they already love. Not something new, not something exciting or innovative, but good, comfortable, something that feels like coming home, that feels like Assassin's Creed didn't forget about you. And that's why I love this game. Sure, there are gonna be people for whom it's not enough. There are gonna be players who try this game and shrug and scoff and look down on it. Wow, this is just Assassin's Creed, they'll say. Yes, this is just Assassin's Creed. Something I have been starving for such a long time. It is exactly what I wanted it to be. Thank you for listening. May fog shroud you, may stars light your way, and may the night keep you safe.